You found the Sales Hunter podcast. My name's Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter, and trust. Hey, think about trust. Everybody talks about the word, but what does it really mean? And does your customer trust you? And how does that impact pricing? On the show today, I'm just blowing everything today. We have Yoram Solomon. He is Ph.D. when it comes to trust. And you know what? I guess we better get him on the show right after this.
You're listening to the Sales Hunter podcast with Mark Hunter, where the focus is to help you as a sales leader sell with confidence and integrity. And now here's your host.
Hey, welcome back to the show. And we are talking about trust today. Let's get Yoram Solomon in here. Maybe he can save me from, man, I've been blowing the intro and everything. This is like not good. Yoram, thank you for joining us. You are the trust. Hey, you got a PhD.
I do.
Yeah. Does that make you really smart?
No. Ask my daughters.
Oh, ask your daughter. Wow. That's, boy.
They don't even think I'm funny. I think I'm funny. Aren't I funny? Yes, I'm funny.
Well, you're on my show right now, so I'll say you're funny. But after the show's over, I won't. How's that sound?
Well, I know where you live.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is scary. So anyway, hey, let's jump into it. Talk to us a little bit. The role of trust. How do you define trust? Let's start right there. How do you define trust?
Man, I love that you started with that question, because I looked at every definition of trust I ever could put my hands on, and I ended up with this definition. Trust is your willingness to accept the negative consequences of giving control over something you have to another person, expecting them to minimize those negative consequences. It's a mouthful, I know, but think about that in the context of selling something. What is it that you're giving?
Just a second. Let's back up and repeat that again, because I think some people need to hear that again. I know I do.
You want to see if I'm going to say the same thing.
No, I have a feeling you will, so I trust you.
Trust is your willingness to accept the possible negative consequences of giving control over something you have to another person, expecting them to minimize the negative consequences.
Wow. That's pretty powerful.
Now you know why the Book of Trust has 550 pages.
Yeah, now I know why you have a PhD too. So, okay, so let's break that down. How does that play out in sales?
Well, what is it that you have control over? You have control over your money. You actually have control over other things, because sometimes you buy something, and if you bought the wrong thing, it's not only money that you wasted time, you wasted energy, you missed an opportunity maybe. In a couple of months, I'm going to speak to photographers. Think about a wedding photographer. If you hired the wrong wedding photographer, it's not just time. You lost the opportunity. That's it. You're done. You got bad pictures and nothing to show for a wedding that I don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars it's going to cost me when I get both my daughters married. But
but for wedding number 2, wedding number 3, you can just hire a different. Okay, I'm sorry. We won't.
For wedding number 3, I'm going to have to tell my wife that I have another kid, because we only have 2.
So now that's a pretty powerful example, because that's a one-time experience, hiring the photographer. But that normally doesn't come up in most buying transactions, we'll say. So talk to us about it.
Here is something interesting. This was when I was still discovering my way, finding my way into trust. I realized that trust was important. So I did my PhD. My PhD was really on something that I thought was completely different. It was on answering the question, why are people so much more creative when they work for small startup companies than when they work for large mature companies? And as I was building this model, I ended up with this foundational block that I called trust. And so at that point, I started asking myself, should I be focusing on that trust thing? And I did an interesting survey. I asked, what is the most important quality for you in another person? And I asked about 6 types of people. I asked about your boss, your employees, your peers, a salesperson trying to sell you something, your government representative, and your spouse. What is the most important quality for you? I got answers. I combined them. I got the top 5 answers. Got 363 responses. In number 5, you want to know what is the 5th most important quality for you in other people? Good looks.
Wow.
I know. And that train, unfortunately, has left the station for me. But
I was never in the station. So, yeah. Yeah.
Number 1, with more than 60%, actually more than 61.16%, trustworthiness, the most important.
Most important.
But when I broke it into the 6 different types, the highest, we ranked trustworthiness the highest when we were asked about a salesperson trying to sell you something, 76.7%. What's the most important quality for you in a salesperson trying to sell you something? 3 out of 4 people said trustworthiness.
Where does price come in? I mean, was price like number 2?
So, no, number 2 was the willingness. You're going to love this one. Number 2 was the willingness to work hard. Number 3 was intelligence. Number 4 was the willingness to take risk. But
okay, now I love that, because this is the whole thing. So many salespeople think that price is everything. They think price is everything, and you just blew that right out of the water. Actually, and trustworthiness at 76%. Is that what you said?
76.7%.
76.7. And then the next one down is a full 10% below that.
No, the average was 61%.
The average is
the next one down, if I remember correctly, was the spouse. So you wanted to know that you can trust her. So think about that. Trustworthiness is more important to me in a salesperson than in my spouse.
Okay, that is a mic drop moment right there.
Let me drop the mic then.
There you go. Because that tells us about really the role that we as salespeople play with customers, and we can never underestimate that. That's a pretty powerful number that you just shared. That's pretty powerful.
It doesn't end there.
Okay, keep going.
So I looked at this answer and I thought, this is interesting, but you know what? People would say anything, right? So let me see if they're willing to put their money where their mouth is. So I did a second survey. This one was focused on sales. By the way, this is why the first book out of 19 books so far, book number 20 will come out probably next month. Out of 19 books, the first book that actually had the word trust in the title was a book about sales. And I think I sent you a copy of that book.
Yes, you did. And that's what kind of prompted this show. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I provided a scenario. I built my model of what trust is. A model is actually, I'm wearing it proudly on my shirt. And or all of my shirts have the logo, but which it would be terrible if the model changes, because then I have like 18 shirts that need to change. But so I did a scenario, and based on this model, I described 2 salespeople. So you're about to do a project. I estimated it at about $10,000. You're doing your research. You invited 2 companies. 2 salespeople came in. One of them had all the qualities of a trustworthy salesperson. The other one was the opposite. And then at the end, I suggested both of them submitted a quote for exactly the same price. Which one would you choose? The trustworthy one or the not trustworthy one?
Well, the trustworthy one, of course, I would think.
You'll be surprised how many people thought that was a trick question. It was not a trick question.
Wow. Now that right there says that people come into things with a skeptical perspective.
True. Which, by the way, will play a role in trust. But so then I asked, but what if the trustworthy salesperson would ask 10% higher price? So now you have 10% higher versus, or trustworthy is 10% higher, untrustworthy, same price. So 10%, I still had 100% of the people said, I'm going to go with the trustworthy one. Then I asked, how about 20%? 54% said they're still going to go with the trustworthy one. I asked about 50%, and I still had over 20. weighted all of this into a formula, and I got this number. Mark, get this. A trustworthy salesperson can sell the same product or service for 29.6% higher price and still get the business.
Okay, what you just heard, everybody listening, absolutely powerful insights from Yoram Solomon, Ph.D. in trust. He understands this. And listen, go back and replay it again, because what he's sharing right there is that trust certainly does impact the price you get. That's huge. That's absolutely. How should salespeople use that? How should salespeople leverage that? Or should they?
One of the keynotes that I'm asked to give over and over, especially for sales organization, is titled this: Sell on trust and not on price. Think about cold calling. Cold calling is going away. I just looked today at the statistics, at the most recent statistics of what percentage of emails are spam emails. You have any idea how many spam messages are sent in one day? Here in the US alone, over 60 billion spam messages. 49% of our inbox or messages sent to us are spam messages. Google blocks, so this is where the number is coming. Google, Gmail blocks 60%, 60 billion spam messages a day. Now, when all of that is happening, more fraud, more spam, people are trying to sell you something. Just the other day, somebody called me and said, we've been trying to reach you. How would you like us to help you publish your first book in less than a year? I'm like, could you not have done your homework before? Because if you will be helping me, it's going to be book number 20. It's not a secret that I have 19 books. If you want to build trust, number one is you have to start building what I call a personality compatibility. You have to know who you're selling to. Now, Mark, your specialty is in prospecting. Prospecting is changing. You can't just say, oh, this is a person that should be a fit. Actually, today most of the spam messages you're getting are from people that don't even know who you are. They don't care who you are. They're just going with the numbers. 1 in 10,000 is going to respond positively. But if you start by building trust, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm starting by building trust to get to the point where you're going to tell me that you want to buy from me. And it's about, again, personality compatibility. It's understanding what is it that you need, not what I have.
Wow. Okay. You dropped so much there. And I want to add some commentary, because something I've been saying for a long time, and that is, in the absence of trust, price is everything. The higher the level of trust between the seller and the customer, the higher the price point that's going to be agreed upon. It's just simple. But in the absence of trust, price is everything. Do you buy into that? Do you agree with that?
I agree, but I would even add one more thing, because I came up with this 29.6%, but 29.6% was the average. And I did describe a certain type of project, and I started following up, and what I found was that there are several factors that would affect that margin, okay, that premium. One is, what are the consequences of getting the job done poorly? Okay, so let's say that it's really painting the house. What's the worst thing that can happen? You're going to have to paint it again. If it was $10,000, you're going to spend another $10,000. Maybe it's a risk I'm willing to take. I'm not willing to pay premium. What if if what you're buying, I gave you that example, a wedding photographer. Get a wedding photographer. Are you going to get the cheaper one, or are you going to get the one that you trust will give you good pictures? Well, now the premium is starting to go higher, because the consequences, how can you put a price on the consequences of, my daughter got married and we got no pictures? Photographer forgot the SD card. The SD card was unformatted, whatever. Think about if the sale is, and it's kind of a crazy sell, a brain surgeon operating on your kid. What's the premium there to know that you're choosing a trustworthy brain surgeon. That premium, 29.6%, is the average. It can go way higher.
Wow. Okay, now let's break this down more then. How do we as salespeople create trust with the customer?
So the first step, if I look at this model, I have all of those components here. One is competence. So how do you demonstrate competence? And it could be competence of you, the salesperson. It would be competence of the company, the product itself. Maybe it's some kind of certifications, things that will build your competence. Portfolio. One of the first questions, I tell people I'd be happy to hire coaches. I need to find a coach that took someone from where I am to where I want to be. And I want 3 references from people who were taken by that coach from where I am to where they want to be. And I'm still waiting to get the first coach who wants to work with me, who's going to say, I got 3 references for you. By the way, that touches on one of my 8 laws of trust, and that's that trust is transferable. Give me somebody, take you, Mark. I know you, I trust you. And if you tell me you should work with Lisa, whoever Lisa is, I will trust you because trust is transferable. So you can establish yourself through those references. Now, the references, you got quantity and quality. So, when you go into an Uber car, you don't know people who drove with or rode that car with that driver, but there's like 900 people who gave a 5-star review. So this is quantity. In other things, I want to know, someone like you, Mark. I know you. I'm going to trust you more than I'm going to trust 921 people I don't know in certain circumstances. So you establish this. The other thing is do your homework. Do your homework on the other person, the person you want to sell to. Sometimes you just look up their LinkedIn profile and you're going to go, oh, we went to the same university. Bring this up and you created something in common. Bring up something you know about them and you've created something in common. And by the way, that's empathy. The next thing, and I break the trustworthiness model into 2 major parts. Who you are, those are the red ones, and what you do when you interact with me, those are the blue ones. So, for example, interactions, phone call, not as good as a Zoom call because you can see my face and you can see the consistency between what I say and the words and how I say it. So the words and the body language or the facial expressions. Those are keys. So, in that book, I actually put 50 plus 1 habits that will make you a more trusted salesperson.
Now, okay, so what are some quick things that you think a salesperson should be doing right now to help elevate the level of trust? And then I'm going to ask you a second part with this. How do we know if the customer trusts us?
Ooh, that's an excellent question. So, but I'll start with the first part. I'm going to give you one really quick, very easy, that I'm amazed that salespeople don't do that. But then I'm going to have to charge you $9.99 for that first one. Second one is free. No, the first one. Ask a simple question. Is this a good time for you? Hi, this is Yoram. I'm from B&H Camera. I want to tell you about a special deal that we have. Is this a good time for you? If this is not a good time, keeping them on the phone does not increase the probability of sale. It reduces the probability of trust and it reduces the probability of sale. Simple question. Is this a good time for you? And oh, by the way, wait for the answer. And if the answer is no, then what would be a good time if that's okay with you? Such a simple thing. So many salespeople don't do it.
Okay, let's go to that second piece then. How do we know if the customer is really trusting us?
You can tell that, again, since I'm a big advocate to one of the components here is intimacy. And intimacy, you can use words, emails, that has very little impact. You can go up a level, let them hear your tone of voice, and that would be a phone call. Go a level up, Zoom call or a face-to-face. Face-to-face is the best. Just like they can read your body language and see the consistency between your words and your tone and your facial expressions, your body language overall, you can see theirs. You can see when they are hesitant. You can see that something you said, if you're sensitive enough, if you can decode their body language, which, by the way, during COVID, when everybody was wearing masks, was very hard to do, because more muscles were under the mask than outside of the mask, but we don't have that anymore. Your ability to decode, your ability to read your customer and see that something is going the wrong direction and stop and understand what happened. You know what? One more thing, and this falls under the component of positivity for me, or a subcomponent of no BS. Not everybody needs your product. I'm sorry, not everybody needs your product. I was in a trade show with my wife. She was selling, and she's not a salesperson. And I remember a customer came in and she said, and I could overhear, I'm talking to one customer, she's talking to another customer, prospective customer. And at some point I hear her say, I don't think this product is for you. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? We're trying to sell. We're not trying to push them away. But I realized it wouldn't have been a good sell if she sells it to someone who doesn't need it. You have the responsibility to understand what they need and sell them what they need if you have it, and not sell them if you don't, but not try and sell them what you think they want to hear.
Oh, I love what you're saying. I love what you're sharing, this whole element of trust. We got to wrap up the show here in a bit. But it's powerful about how trust, and I want to go back to those numbers again that you shared. When there's a level of trustworthiness between the two parties, how there is a higher price point in play. Customers are willing to pay more. And so, to answer the question, the title of the show, does your customer trust you? And the impact on pricing, it's huge.
Yeah.
And again, I can only imagine the negativity factor of trust. So anyway, hey, with that, where do people find out more about you? You got 19 books. Book number 20 is coming out. How do people get the books? Where's all that stuff at?
I have no idea. I mean, I see a few here, but I don't know where the others are. Well, obviously, you can find the books on Amazon. You can find my podcast, my own podcast, The Trust Show, right here on Apple. The place where you can find everything or be routed to everything is trusthabits.com.
Trusthabits.com. And your podcast is absolutely great because it's just you. I mean, you really get into some absolutely incredible content. And that's The Trust Show, and of course, Amazon. Hey, today we have been talking about trust. Our guest has been Yoram Solomon. Absolutely outstanding. And you got to go back and replay again because he's got the numbers. He's got the numbers on trust and its impact on price and the customers. We want to say thank you for listening to the Sales Hunter Podcast. What is the Sales Hunter Podcast about? It's about giving you 2 shows each week. One, a short 6-minute show where I just share with you one idea on one topic, and the second show, a longer one like this, where we dive deep into a subject. The Sales Hunter Podcast, it's about helping you find out new information that you can use. Why? Because sales is about helping others see and achieve what they didn't think was possible. And that's what, again, we did today. Yoram, thank you so much for being on the show. And
Mark,
thank
you for having me on The Sales Hunter.
You got it. Thank you for listening to the Sales Hunter Podcast.